Thank you so much. And thank you very much to all of our 4 founders and our esteemed judges. That our judges will get a little bit of a break. We're now on to our next keynote. Delphine and Sandy are well known by our HITLAB community as experts, strong and important voices, empowering female and male founders that are solving unmet needs in women's health. I can't wait to hear from these two, and thank you both for being here. Delphine, would you please introduce the conversation?
Sure, and thank you, Susan, and the entire team. I'm just so impressed by the founders and your presentations today, and not just what you're doing, but presenting to such a group, takes nerve, and it's really just impactful. And talking about inspiring, you might know Sandy Milligan as the head of R&D for Organon. What you might not also know is that she was a practicing physician. She was a practicing lawyer. She decided to get her law degree because she had some extra time. And she was also, when she first told me that, I was like, okay. She was also in the military and has some great pictures from that time. Is an accomplished wakeboarder, and the list goes on and on. What I think is her greatest accomplishment is being such a leader in women's health, as well as an amazing person. So that's why it's just perfect to start this conversation with, what we're calling the revolution in women's health. And Sandy, my question to you would be, how do you define, or how do you imagine this revolution, and why, when you could be dedicating your personal and professional commitments to so many different areas, have you chosen women's health?
Well, first, Delphine, thanks for inviting me. And I'm going to come to every one of your interactive chats if that's the way I get introduced. It's just fantastic. So thank you very much for that. I feel honored to be here and just have such respect for everyone who's come forward today to talk about their innovation and the way they're thinking about how to improve women's healthcare from discovery all the way to delivery. It's been super exciting to see. When I think about the women's health revolution, I think what's been most important is that we're hearing more and more the voices of women. And although I think that's really expected, especially for some of our younger women, our younger generation, they're very used to social media and putting themselves out there. You're also starting to hear voices of women who are in a different generation and are not quite as accustomed to social media, but now we hear conversations about menopause. I think the New York Times article from this past weekend was really hit on point about some of the opportunities we have to treat symptoms that plague women in the last third of their life. So I love the fact that women are telling stories about their journeys to seek medical care, about their journeys to resolution of symptoms or resolution of disease. And I think that helps everyone around the table to understand that not every disease is going to present in the same way. Not every woman has the experience of the same set of symptoms for a disease or a condition or phase in her life. So I think it's really important that we've started to hear more from women and women's voices. Another area that makes me excited about women's innovation is I do think that science is a bit on the cusp of unlocking new academic and basic research in women's health. I feel like women's health is where oncology was 15, 20 years ago, where we were desperate for cures. We were desperate. We had chemotherapy, radiation therapy, Gleevec could come on the market, but we really didn't have targeted, personalized therapies because the research just hadn't caught up to the targets and the ability to identify lead candidates in the pharmaceutical or biologic space. Look how that has moved in the past 10 years. The whole immuno-oncology movement, the personalized medicine, the targeted therapies have really moved forward medicine and medical solutions for cancer patients. It's just fantastic. What I would like to see is the same for women. Let's get beyond the reproductive endocrine axis that we have been hitting year after year, decade after decade with hormonal therapy. And certainly we have bright green shoots of hope. But I do think that there is additional investment going into basic primary research, and we're seeing that in some of the early preclinical assets that we've been taking a look at on behalf of Organon. I also think that there are more opportunities now, and you can see it in the presentations today, to think beyond the pill, right? Let's get beyond the pill. What are the devices? What are the digital therapeutics? What are the services that are going to help women put their arms around their symptoms or their conditions and help manage for themselves their healthcare? What is going to improve their health literacy? What is going to help them achieve the outcomes that they're seeking to achieve? So I think going again beyond hormonal control, hormonal access, is just opened up a whole field of devices, digital, diagnostics, as well as therapeutics and biologics. So I love where we're headed as an entire community. And then I think what really gets me excited, and particularly in my role at Organon, is the variety of entrepreneurs that we're seeing. I love it. I love the fact that you see physician entrepreneurs, you see nurse entrepreneurs, engineers. There's so many people that are collectively putting their heads together, and they're willing to put themselves out there and think about how to change women's health and how women feel and progress through their symptoms or their diseases or just through their life, frankly. And I also like how we have developed male allies, especially in the innovator field. I think it's important. I think every man has a woman in her life, one way or the other, a sister, a mom, an aunt, a grandmother, a daughter, a partner. And I think it's incredibly important that as we go on this journey, we're not on this journey alone. So I love the number of innovators that I see, the entrepreneurs in the space. And I think that there are a lot of bright lights of new discoveries and innovations that are going to help women globally.
So why, there's a lot of work, in healthcare, we've been talking about this since the ACA, if not before. I've talked about disruption, transformation, journeys, and my personal view on this, and that's why I said, let's name this revolution. I don't think that we can have it be a disruption or a journey, because it's going to take too long, and that we are now in a pivotal point in history where there's a wedge, and we need to increase that wedge. And we can talk about different ways to do that, whether that's through investment, whether that's through policy, laws. I think, and this isn't just with my lawyer hat on, but we saw with Dobbs the impact that a law can have and how important it is for us to not just understand the laws, but to influence and push for laws that support us, across the board. We need the research. We need that single voice in the organization. Why revolution? Do you, or maybe you don't, see, do you see this pressing need to move it hard now?
Well, I think the need is there, and I think we're seeing it, but I think that different countries and different populations are in different parts of the journey, right? I think that we have the benefit of being in a Western, well-developed world. There's an opportunity for our voices to be heard. And I think that we have an opportunity to really change the way that we experience health, the way we experience medicine and interventions, whether it's therapeutics or others. I do worry about the populations of women who are going to be left behind globally. And so always thinking about how do we externalize, how do we globalize the solutions that we're bringing forward? I think you're absolutely right. I think revolutionize, especially in, if you want to call it a pilot community or a pilot country, or, we're pushing the boundaries of what is possible, what can be done. But I think about Turkey. I think about what's happening in Syria and Turkey, and it's going to set women and children, actually the whole population, back by a decade while they rebuild. All the impact on the physicians and the access to care, the medicines, the supply chains, the distribution, it's just incredible. And so when I think about those communities that seem to be besieged by either politics, poverty, civil war, what have you, we have to think beyond just what we're doing here. And I think so, even though we may have a revolution because the time is exactly right, I don't want to leave behind others and maybe the small local revolutions that they also need to have in order to increase the health of the entire population in that country, and certainly in that gender.
And I think that's super interesting for a couple points. And just so the audience knows, Sandy and I did not prep. We're like, as long as we know where we have to show, we're here there, because we try to keep these fresh. And Sandy and I could talk for hours, which we do offline. I think it's an interesting point, because it is the geopolitical. We've seen Ukraine, we've seen Afghanistan, now obviously Turkey and Syria. We've seen this over and over again, where women are put back 20, 30 years. And, to your earlier point of, it's not just about reproduction, it's and both. All right. It's not exclusion of, exclusion of reproduction, or it's not important, or it doesn't have to be limited. It can be menopause, it could be osteoporosis, it could be cardiac health and reproduction. It can be revolution in certain countries. And also possibly, maybe that is another subsection of care is, I can't remember, Susan would remember whether it was last year or the year before. There was a fantastic founder who was keeping the medical records of, I think it was Syrian refugees, and a way for the women who were going from one location to another. Susan will remember and put it in the chat. Maybe it was Hero Health. But anyways, I thought at the time that was amazing. So women who have to or being displaced aren't able to present necessarily with the medical records. Hey, we can barely get our EHRs or our medical records. So to think about, okay, again, it's not and or, it's both. It's care for men and care for women. It's care for fertility and it's care for menopause. And it's care for the millions of women who don't have access. And I think there's a role, companies like Organon that have your international scope to say, what can we do to replicate? I think there's some great examples around menstrual cups that has, period products for so many reasons, have cultural obstacles. There are environmental obstacles, the ability to create a menstrual cup, for example, that can be manufactured locally and distributed.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that would be a huge breakthrough. I know there's several companies that are close to that. Susan, Hera Digital Health. Not our Hera today. Okay. So I got part of it, but not all of it. A phenomenal example of following the need. And I think that's what we're seeing today. Wow, there are great solutions. There's a need for all of the solutions. There wasn't one solution where I thought, wow, where'd that come from? How do we match? Because we know that investment, we can talk about the laws, because I do think it's critical that we have particularly with the 2024 elections coming up, but also with the abortion landscape. Frankly, it's chaos. Is there's an opportunity for us to be loud, for us to be saying, in unison, to call our Congress people, whatever it is that's comfortable for you, to advance our collective agenda of better health options and driving women's health. But how in the immediate, and I think this is an acute concern right now as we hear, there's certain companies that won't have enough cash to sort of withstand this economic downturn. What are your thoughts on connecting amazing founders and the investment? What can we do to move the needle? And we're not going to go into the 1.9% versus 3%, but really move that needle in investment, really having a investment revolution.
Yeah, well, I think that it comes down to, there are a lot of great ideas. They're fantastic ideas. When you're thinking about the investment, it is about, can you pull this great idea through to access, right? So all the way from discovery to access, because without access, it won't be consumed one way or the other, and there won't be a market for it. And so when we take a look at a certain asset or technology, and it has to be also fit for the right company or the right investment, is that particular asset, is it in my space, first of all? So if I'm in, in Organon, we're in women's health. And so we focus on the environment that is the OBGYN office. So if it is, and there's a fine line, for instance, what if the asset is for migraine? It's not usually in the wheelhouse necessarily of an OBGYN to treat migraine. They might try some initial treatments, but if it gets too serious, they're going to send it out to a neurologist or a specialist. So it's an interesting place. And so when you're approaching an investor, do your homework, right? Whether it's a pharmaceutical company, a device company, do your homework. What is the field that they're in? How do I position my asset so that it locks in step with where their direction seems to be? So if I'm and I think most innovators do this, but really be particular, take a look at some of the public speaking points of the CEO, of the head of R&D, see how you can match and align, because you'll be pulled in if your innovation matches the direction that that company's moving. So I think that's really important. Sometimes we get innovation that comes in that isn't quite a match for our business model, isn't quite a match for the direction that we're headed. I also think that having high quality data always wins the day. And if you can lead with data, it opens the door. Don't lead with a pitch, lead with data. So the more data that you can collect, the more data that I have to assess and move forward. So I think it's a combination of both. Know the direction the company's going, make sure that you've done your homework, and make sure that you've got a set of data that will open those doors and lead to those conversations.
So I'm going to wrap it up because I know we're excited to go to our next set of pitches. 3 quotes from Sandy for everybody. Asset to access. I love that one. Match and align, and high quality data always wins. So just think of those 3. It is such a pleasure to be part of this forum. And thank you to Susan for inviting us to be part of your revolution. Thanks to everyone, and feel free to reach out on LinkedIn. I think I was speaking for Sandy as well. We're happy to get in touch and answer any questions that you may have. So again,
Absolutely.
thank you.
Thank you, Delphine. Thank you all.
Thank you, Delphine and Sandy. I mean, it's just, you guys are just, I mean, amazing. It's so much fun to listen, and we'd all like to keep listening. So thank you. We really appreciate it.